Like I said on the dance floor, you might want to find something to hang on to.
Dr. Song, I've lost good clerics today. You trust this man?
I absolutely trust him.
He's not some kind of madman, then.
I absolutely trust him.
Hello, sweeties, and welcome to Prepare the Time Lash, the Doctor Who podcast that takes a closer look at the adventures of River Song and her time with the Doctor. I am one of your hosts, Mike Ferguson.
And I am your other host, Ken Hart. Mike, what are we talking about tonight?
Tonight, we move on from the David Tennant years to the beginning, literally the very beginning of the Matt Smith years as the 11th Doctor in Spoilers, what I think might arguably be one of the best stories, period, in Doctor Who history.
Yeah.
And that is the two-parter, The Time of Angels and Flesh and Stone.
I would have to agree with that, Mike. Not to get too far ahead of things, but having watched this again in preparation for this recording, I then immediately rewatched both parts a second time because it's just that good and there's so much juicy content in here. And I know it's been a while since we recorded. It seems like a lifetime ago since we recorded Silence in the Library. But in that lifetime, Mike, we had the appearance of our good old friend Sutek in the Ncuti Gatwa season finale. It's like season 3 just won't let us escape.
We are going to have very cross words with Russell T Davies if we see him at Gallifrey 1, if he attends. Listeners, we're not going back.
No.
We may do a bonus episode just on the Ncuti Gatwa season because when we recorded our last episode, it was right before that season started. And now it is July 14th and it's well over.
Yes.
But in the meantime, we're on to Series 5 with Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor, as I said. And not only I think is this one of the best stories in Doctor Who history, quite frankly, this may be the best season of all time.
Yeah.
It is so good. And this is Moffat firing on all cylinders. It's amazing that this is his first season as the Doctor Who showrunner because it is almost flawless.
Yeah, I agree. You can tell he's had a lot of ideas bubbling in his head about maybe things he wanted to do as showrunner. And so now here he is. So Moffat coming into this, he obviously had a lot of ideas that he wanted to express as showrunner. He knew at one point that he certainly would dearly have loved to follow up on River's Song appearance in Silence in the Library. But he didn't 100% know that he would be able to do River Song as a recurring character because so much would be contingent upon the availability of Alex Kingston to play River. And so when he was putting this together, it was kind of a bit of wishful thinking by Moffat. Hey, Alex, are you available for this? And she was more than happy to do it because she had a great time doing the two-parter with Tennant. And so you have this two-parter, which kicks butt. You've got the season opener, the 11th Hour, which to me, I tell people is one of the best introductory stories to watch if you've never seen an episode of Doctor Who.
Yes. During the pandemic, my daughter, who was then 10, wanted to watch Doctor Who with me for the first time. And that's where we started. So we watched the entire Matt Smith era together. And it was a perfect jumping on point. I mean, she got exactly who the character was and understood that there were previous versions. But yeah, it's a great place if you are just like, what's this show about?
Yeah.
This season fits well. And it doesn't hurt that pretty much all the stories in it are just, at worst, they're good.
Yeah.
At best, they're classic. This one.
Yeah. I mean, Beast Below, it's not bad.
No.
Not my favorite. It's not a bad story. And to me, that's about as low as it gets this season.
Yeah.
But you can pick a bit at Victory of the Daleks. There's, about the new paradigm Daleks and such, but that's a different concept. This whole season is just so strong. And yeah, it does introduce things that maybe Moffat kind of goes back to the well too often on in later seasons. But as his own creature, season 5 is outstanding.
Yes. So this originally aired April 24th and May 1st of 2010. So we're 14 years ago. Good God.
Crazy.
And as I said, this was the first episodes filmed. So, I mean, kind of what impressed me as I was watching this, because I was keeping it in mind, is you're literally seeing the first time Karen Gillan and Matt Smith are playing the Doctor and Amy Pond. And they just both come out of the gate perfectly. It's said that Moffat went to kind of the model that Peter Davison had in his first season, where it's, oh no, we're not going to start with the first episode. We'll film the first episode a little later after you get more of a feel for the character.
Yeah.
I always hate that with Davison because it's not really what happened. The actual first episode just sucked, and Castrovalva got brought in as a replacement. So they had nothing to film. So that's why Four to Doomsday is the first one. That's like the excuse they made later, but that's what really happened. But regardless, that's what they took for Matt Smith, and I think it works great.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at it and watching this two-parter with that knowledge in mind of this is the first time that Matt Smith and Karen Gillan are doing these roles, it's beautiful. They already embody these roles so well. And the chemistry between the Doctor and Amy, and how fully realized Amy is right off the bat, about how clever she is, and how forceful she is. And she's curious, but not in a what is a doctor type curious. She asks good questions, and we get a sample early on of how insightful she is, because when she's quizzing River and saying that she thinks River is actually the doctor's wife.
Right.
And River doesn't confirm that, because we know from later stories that if River did confirm that, that would mess up all of history. But River does say, "You're very good. You're very good, Amy."
Yeah, and she also goes, "I'm not saying you're right, but you're very good." It's a very clever way of implying you're right without saying you're right.
And I think another thing that Moffat was very wise to do here is not just bring back River Song, but bring back the Angels.
Yes.
Because when Moffat created the Angels in Tennant's second season,
In Blink.
with Blink, yeah, he immediately created the first New Who monster that could indisputably join the top ranks of Doctor Who foes.
Oh, it's an iconic monster. I mean, it's in that upper tier, that rare upper tier with the Daleks and the Cybermen.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, really, you have Daleks, Cybermen, and Angels. Everything else, maybe with the exception of the Master, depending on the incarnation, everything else drops significantly. Sorry, fans of the Sontarans out there.
Yeah. Quark people, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't come close. Sorry. And what he does with the Angels in this is very much not repeat how we encountered them in Blink. Whereas Blink is pretty much a horror story, this two-parter is an action story with horror elements to it.
Right. In reading up on this earlier today, this was the first time I'd encountered this quote, and I found it quite appropriate.
Okay.
Moffat apparently said something along the lines of Blink was alien, and he didn't want to repeat it. So he decided to make this two-parter more like James Cameron's Aliens, where you still have the creature, the alien creature, but as you said, it's much more action oriented. And I remember watching this at the time, and I didn't necessarily like some of the things they added onto the Angels, but
Hmm.
overall, I think it's in hindsight, I think it's a very smart move not to just go, everything you knew about them before is going to apply now. He kind of adds more dimension to them.
Yes.
And if anything, they become a lot more creepy, which considering Blink is really creepy, that's saying something.
Yeah, like this gives them an intelligence and a cunning that I don't think we necessarily see in Blink. In Blink, we just know they feed on time energy. They're almost like temporal sharks. They feed on temporal energy wherever they can find it. And so it doesn't necessarily imply any sort of intelligence. We know they're intelligent, but of course, we know they can be incredibly patient, but so can, any sort of predator. With this two-parter, we see them making conscious decisions, and we see a malevolence and a maliciousness that was not evident in Blink.
Yeah, as you said, they're more animal level in Blink, where you could kind of go, okay, what they're doing is horrible, but, so is a great white shark when it smells blood.
Right. They're feeding.
Yeah, this one, I mean, you have the whole thing where they're snapping the necks of people only because they want to use them to talk and taunt the doctor. Like Angel Bob, that poor guy.
Oh, yeah.
They has that one whole line where, Doctor, you lied to me. I died in pain and I was afraid.
Yeah.
And they're just poking the bear.
Yeah.
They are just trying to have him make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a level of vicious intelligence that you did not see in Blink.
Yeah. It works out very well. It makes them, I think, going forward, kind of to what your point earlier, Mike, going forward, the Angels, I think, become a better realized villain with bigger motivations. I mean, we hear in this story how they want to just keep absorbing this energy and take control of the Byzantium. They want the Byzantium. They want to be able to fly around space.
Yeah.
And go to all the stars. And we hear this weird screeching, horrible noise, and it ends up being the Angels laughing.
Right. Yeah.
At the fact that they know something the Doctor doesn't.
Yeah.
So it makes them a bigger threat, I think, going forward in the series. It gives them more motivation than just being hungry time eaters. And it makes them just plain evil in a way that Blink doesn't necessarily give us.
Right.
I do want to say, before we even get into the Angels, I just want to say how much I love the opening few minutes of that first story.
Oh my God. That alone, that might be the best opener of a Doctor Who story ever.
Right. Because you don't know River Song's coming back. We all know from rewatching this multiple times, yeah, River Song's in this. But if you're watching this for the very first time cold, you don't know River Song's coming back. You have no idea if that character you saw in Silence in the Library is ever coming back.
Yeah.
And all we see early on are the now iconic red shoes, the red high-heeled shoes, and the black dress. And then as the Doctor and Amy are in that museum and the Doctor's translating the High Gallifreyan that no one can read anymore, and the Doctor says, it says, "Hello, sweetie." And there they just cut the River Song with the sunglasses on and the little gun. It's just perfect. And the Doctor and Amy steal the black box recording, essentially, from the
home
museum.
box.
The home box, thank you. They steal that, and they get the surveillance footage from however many centuries ago. And there's very casually giving off a string of numbers. And Amy says, what's she saying? She's giving temporal coordinates. Like, she knows the Doctor's going to watch this at some point in his timeline. And so she's basically asking the Doctor for a ride.
And we'll get into this probably more over the next couple of episodes as well. But I want to say one of the things I think made Stephen Moffat so successful as his time as showrunner of Doctor Who is he's one of the few writers we see who gets time travel as part of the show.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
River is doing this centuries ago, but she knows that it doesn't matter when the Doctor sees this. He has a time machine that can travel in space and go to the exact coordinates that she's asking for. So
Yeah.
he's 12,000 years in her future.
Yeah.
And she's reading off the coordinates, and she just has the confidence. And that also gets to the character of River, just that unswaying faith in the Doctor that she can do this
Mm-hmm.
and blow the airlock. By the way, send an air corridor. I love that, like, as an aside.
Yeah.
And just does that and knows, okay, yes, there's a big time difference, but it doesn't matter.
Doesn't
He's going
matter.
to see it. He's going to come at the right time, and she'll be rescued.
Yeah. That's it. Doesn't matter. He does get it. I mean, a lot of times throughout the entire history of Doctor Who, the only temporal element in the story is the fact that the Doctor rides in a time machine that takes him to a particular place and time.
Right.
And that's about as far as it gets in terms of discussing the ins and outs of time travel. The entire history, the entire relationship of the Doctor and River is a temporal, I can't even call it jigsaw puzzle. But you and I discussed early on before we even started recording this. Should we do this in chronological order in terms of the episodes? Or should we try to record this from River's point of view in that order? And yeah, I think we made the right choice in doing this in the broadcast order. But, that kind of just gets to the point of how intricately time travel is woven into Moffat's stories, and in particular in Moffat's River Song stories.
Right. And the fact that it works, I cannot stress enough. It's very casual just to say, oh, yeah, it's this very complicated thing. It's very complicated, and as far as I'm concerned, very easy to do wrong.
Mm-hmm.
This could have been a gigantic, confusing mess in the hands of other writers. I think there's a reason that all the River Song stories are written by Stephen Moffat, because
Yes.
he can keep track of the timeline. He is so many of his stories, and we're going to get to parts of this story as well. It's like a Swiss watch.
Oh, yeah.
Everything is intricate and complicated, and yet it meshes together perfectly. It's amazing to watch some of the things he does, in particular in this season.
Yeah. Because he's already got it all planned out. He knows how the season's going to end. He knows as he's writing this is how I'm expecting Series 5 to end. And we get an example of that in what many people thought at the time was a continuity error when Amy is in the forest in the second part in Flesh and Stone, and the Doctor leaves her. He's lost his jacket to the angels, so he leaves her, and then he comes back 5 seconds later wearing the jacket and asking her to remember something about a visit on her 10th birthday, I think it was. And people who understandably watched this at the time said, oh, geez, what a glaring continuity error. The Doctor's wearing his tweed coat, but he just lost it to the angels 5 minutes ago. And all Moffat just said was, it's not a mistake. Yeah, and that's all he kind of said. He kind of said, it'll become clear.
Yeah, and spoilers, we'll be talking about some of that in our next episode.
Yeah.
But so in watching that this time, one of the things I noticed, because now that we're conscious of that,
Yes.
one, how it's framed, you have to be pretty sharp-eyed to see that he's wearing the jacket. It's a very tight close-up on him, and you can barely see his shoulders. It's mostly just his face.
Exactly.
So it is kind of there. So I was going to ask you, Ken, if you remember, did you notice that the first time around, and what did you think? And if you didn't notice it, what did you think of, because I'm sure you were like me. I didn't notice it at all.
I did not, no, I did not notice it at all. I am not someone who generally examines these things frame by frame as some people love to do, and more power to them, because it kind of reveals some things that were intended and that I might not have picked up on. But no, I had no idea. I completely missed the fact that he was wearing his tweed jacket. I thought it was unusual at the time that what he was asking her to do like remember something.
Yeah, well, it's also, I need you to believe in me.
Yeah, it's never been more important that you believe in me,
Right.
that you remember.
Amy, you need to start trusting me. It's never been more important.
But you don't always tell me the truth.
If I always told you the truth, I wouldn't need you to trust me.
Doctor, the crack in my wall. How can it be here?
I don't know yet, but I'm working it out. Now, listen. Remember what I told you when you were 7?
What did you tell me?
No. No. See, that's not the point. You have to remember.
Remember what? Doctor?
And it's kind of funny that in light of everything going on at that moment with the angels and everything else, that he says it's never been more important. And I think I kind of even remember thinking as he said that, that's an odd thing to say because it seems that there are really higher stakes right now
Right.
in terms of what's immediately going on around you because Amy has an angel inside her head.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't give it a lot of thought, to be honest.
I didn't give it a lot of thought, and then I saw all the things online saying it was a continuity error, and like at the time, I remember Moffat saying, it's not.
Yeah.
You'll see. It makes sense. And I didn't really know what to make of it. I have to say, it never occurred to me that it would actually be another version of him from a different point in time.
Right.
Which is wild. It's funny because as we get to season 6 and season 7, you start putting yourself in that mode. I know I did, of you start looking for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's brilliant to pull off in the first season because if you were used to the RTD era, this is so not what RTD did his first time around.
No.
So he was able to catch people off guard with just that whole idea of, yes, the Doctor is going to pop in on his own time stream and interact with himself.
Right. RTD in his first go round would seed stories with things that he intended to pay off in the finale. Like
Bad Wolf
with the Martha Jones season. With the Bad Wolf, the Martha Jones thing with the reference to the Prime Minister.
Yeah, Saxon. Yeah.
Saxon Prime Minister, Mr. Saxon on the phone, that kind of a thing. Or even
the Dr. Donna. Yeah.
The Dr. Donna, the appearance of Rose, the shocking appearance of Rose at the end of Partners in Crime to set up everything else going on with the Stolen Earth 2-parter at the end of series 4. But nobody, RTD, had not done it to the timey-wimey level that Moffat became famous for, or some people might say infamous for, during his time as showrunner. To be able to have these multiple layers of plot developments going on within the stories of the season that actually have scenes almost out of order between episodes. To have, as you say, the 11th Doctor appearing from a much later point in his timeline, coming back to talk to Amy, having just left her 30 seconds earlier.
Yeah. And I think that cuts to one of the reasons I find just the whole construction of this 2-parter just amazing, is it's operating on, to me, 3 levels.
Okay.
There are just individual scenes within the 2-part story that are just these 5-minute bursts of incredible tension. Like the whole thing with Amy watching the video River took.
Yeah.
It reminded me of The Ring, is what it really reminds me of.
Yes.
Of all of a sudden, the video is moving, it's popping out, it deadlocks the whole thing, so River and the Doctor have to try and get her out. And even though they managed to stop it, it still does the thing where it's in her eye, so it sets that up.
Yeah.
So you have all these scenes in there. Also, when they're just running from airlock to airlock, when they get into the Byzantium, it's just, it's this very in-the-moment tension. But at the same time, they have the major plot moving forward, and then you have the big reveals where, oh, this wasn't really a accidental crash.
Right.
The Angel engineered the crash because it's using the energy from the crash to wake up all the other angels.
Right. It's a rescue mission.
Right.
It's an angel rescue mission.
So you have this bigger picture thing. And when the crack in the wall shows up,
Oh, yeah.
so it's doing this larger work as well as these individual works. And on top of that, it's doing the work to set up the season finale. And it's setting up other things within the season. Getting back to our title person for this whole series that we're doing, it sets up things with River.
Yeah.
It advances the idea that they were married, but all of a sudden you're finding out from Father Octavian that she's been let out of prison for killing somebody.
A good man, a very good man.
Yeah, with the heavy implication of it's the doctor.
Right.
They don't say it, but there's a real heavy implication. And she sets up the Pandorica, and that has one of my favorite lines at the very end.
Yeah.
You'll see me again quite soon when the Pandorica opens.
The Pandorica. That's a fairy tale.
Doctor, aren't we all? I'll see you there.
And he says, I look forward to it. And she says, I remember it well.
Right.
Well, yeah, because they're just meeting out of order. I want to talk about, you were mentioning like just some of the multi-level things. I want to talk about some things that really just stood out to me in terms of really clever twists. Well, first, when we talk about Amy and watching the video of the angel, the whole concept of that which holds the image of an angel becomes itself an angel is brilliant. Because the doctor speed reads this book on the angels, and he's like, how come there are no pictures in it? How are there no illustrations in a book about the weeping angels? And then they come across the line, that which holds the image of an angel becomes an angel. So he and River are trying to figure out, what does that mean? Meanwhile, Amy is experiencing that firsthand.
Right.
As the angel in the video is coming to life and coming out to attack her. And that actually pops up much later during the 13th Doctor's time with the angel story.
The Village of the Angel. Yeah.
Yeah, with what was it, Jellicoe, the professor,
Yes.
Professor Jellicoe. And he's got these photocopies of angels and illustrations. And they all start coming to life. And it's like, oh my God, this is bad. This is very, very bad. So I think that's brilliant. I love the way where they're walking through, and this is the whole set, especially in part one, the Maze of the Dead. This thing supposedly built by the former civilization, the Applans. And they mention a couple of times that the Applans had two heads.
He's so good at just dropping these little things in there that sound like an aside, and they're not.
Yeah. And so then when the doctor realizes the danger they're in, and then he looks at River, and then she realizes it too. And she's like, how could we not have noticed? And I think they might have mentioned something about a perception filter when I've been at work. But the Applans have two heads. Why is their basic statue garden, their mortuary statue garden, all comprised of statues with one head? They're not Applans. They're not Applan statues. They're all weeping angels.
And they also have that aside at the very beginning. What happened to the Applans? Don't know. They disappeared 500 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Which is coincidentally, they later mention, how long has this Garden of the Dead or whatever been around?
Right.
It's about the same amount of time. So they seed it in there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably one or two things in this story that may have these kind of hand-wavy explanations. But again, and the thing of this story I love is how they just button stuff up so well. For example, the statues don't look like weeping angels, which is one of the reasons why they're not thinking about them that way. And the doctor points out, well, they've been starving. They've had nothing to eat for centuries. Of course, they're falling apart.
Yeah.
And that's one reason the ship crashing and releasing all the radiation is great for them, because it's reviving them. But story-wise, it also works well of, well, why didn't the angels just immediately attack them? Because they're coming back to health.
Right.
There's only the original one on the ship, the Byzantium,
right,
that's able to hunt them first.
Yeah.
But as the more time passes, and you see that with the costuming, which is great, they start out as really decrepit. They slowly get better and better. And then by the time we were probably halfway through Flesh and Stone, they look like proper angels. All of them.
Yeah, they're like 90% there.
Yeah.
Yeah. They might have a few cracks on their faces, or the faces might be a little deformed, but they're there. And because at that point, they're not only feeding on the radiation, but on the temporal energy as well.
Right.
From the crack. And I also just want to mention, we talked before about how well Matt Smith and Karen Gillan perform in their roles right off the bat. The way Matt Smith plays the 11th Doctor, we see it very clear in this story. His highs and lows. He can be the goofiest guy imaginable, but he is also capable of intense anger. And he doesn't show it too often in his time as a doctor, but when he does show it, it's always warranted. And we get a couple of big glimpses of it here when he is trying to navigate Amy, who can't see, through this bizarre minefield of angels that are just standing around her. And he's trying to do it, and River says it'll never work. And he just yells at her, "What else have you got? River, tell me." She doesn't have anything else, but to her credit, River is working on restoring the ship's teleport capability, which the Doctor had told her was a waste of time. And it's River who ends up finally saving Amy's ass.
Right.
In that scene by teleporting her away from the angels. And that is another bit. The angels were moving. We actually get to see the angels moving, which is really creepy.
Oh, the first time one turns its head, it's like, oh, God.
Oh, yeah. They're all turning their head. They're starting to reach for her. Oh, that's so good. It's so good.
I have to say, this is probably the first time I thought of it, and this is probably not an original thought. So, dear listener, if you're like, well, duh, I don't blame you. But in watching this, I know everybody's like, Matt Smith he did the bow tie. He really liked the second Doctor, blah, 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 blah. He is probably, Matt Smith, at least in terms of personality and even just acting choices.
Okay.
The closest in Modern Who I've seen to Tom Baker.
Okay.
Where he has that silliness that can instantly morph into righteous rage. I mean,
yeah,
we talked about the pirate planet where
Perfect.
he's just being a goofball, and then all of a sudden he's one-on-one with the captain, and that is well, what's this all for? And he's just in absolute fury.
Yeah.
And when I say acting, Matt Smith just has this way of delivering a line or reacting to something. There's just something off kilter about it. It's not bad, but it's not the way a regular person reacts to something. And David Tennant is a marvelous actor, but his Doctor to me feels very human.
Yeah.
For most of his time there. Matt Smith just has very odd reactions, very interesting readings of lines. Like, I think about what he's saying. It's like, oh, I wouldn't have thought you would say it that way. But
yeah.
Yeah. And the only other person I can think of who's played the Doctor like that is Tom Baker. So
that's interesting.
I'm not saying he's mimicking him or it's like a conscious.
Oh, God, no.
He's doing his own thing. But
right.
I was like, oh, somehow I was watching this going when you had, as you just mentioned, the 11th Doctor is talking Amy blind through that whole field of angels. I found myself thinking, you could probably do this with the 4th Doctor and Sarah Jane Smith.
And
it would just work perfectly. Just that kind of the way he's giving the direction, just that whole feel of it. I was going, I hadn't noticed this before. Again, listener, if you're just like, well, I've always seen this, good. You saw it way faster than I did. But that's what just occurred to me while I was watching it this time around.
Yeah. And no, that's interesting because I hadn't thought about that, but I agree, Mike, that Matt Smith's choices of line readings do, in many cases, go against what one might think the proper line reading would be.
Yes.
Because there are times when his Doctor gets angry and is explosive as he is with River a couple of times just because he's so frustrated with everything going on and he feels he's running out of options. That's one thing. There's another time where we get to the end of the first part. We get to the end of the Time of Angels. And Angel Bob is taunting him with this whole speech about how you lied to me. I died alone and
Afraid.
afraid. And Amy says, what are they doing? And River says, they're trying to make him angry. And there's a look on River's face that she actually looks afraid, River, because she knows, knowing the Doctor as well as we later on know she does know him, she knows what that can mean. And the way the Doctor reacts at that point is not this big explosion of fury. It's very controlled. Like, you shouldn't be testing me like this.
Right.
If you're going to test me like this, I'm going to make you regret it in the worst way possible.
Yeah, it's very just even.
Yeah. It's also like, it reminded me later on, and we'll get to this in A Good Man Goes to War, when he's doing the whole speech to Colonel Runaway about how if you think it's a good idea to get to me through the people I love, and he's really starting to lose it at that point. And he says, you've made me angry. I don't know what's going to happen now. I love it. It's very understated, but you get the sense of when this guy gets angry, he is capable of almost anything.
Yeah, he has more of a seething under the surface kind of rage at times where I'll just say, at least for like Tennant and Capaldi, kind of wore that more openly.
Yeah.
When they're in a kind of a fury, it's not a slow burn. It's this moral outrage.
Yeah.
And with Matt Smith, you don't see that at all. Again, as I said, and you said, you could see how somebody else playing the Doctor, and they wouldn't be playing it wrong, but would be playing it very different from him.
Yeah. Yeah.
He takes very unconventional takes on a lot of things, I find.
Yeah. And again, we've already talked about this a few times. This is his first performance as the Doctor.
Yes.
To be able to have that much of a hold in his head, that much of a fully realized portfolio of emotions in his head as he's approaching this role for the first time is pretty damn impressive. And it shows like the amount of work that he put into it. Obviously, we know he had a lot of discussions with Moffat about this. He was not the biggest Doctor Who fan coming into the role. He did a lot of research on his own, watched a lot of Troughton, obviously, because we see a lot of those Troughton mannerisms popping up, the whole use of the hands and everything. But to have such an emotional portfolio as the Doctor right off the bat, it's a really good job of acting. I'll say that.
Yeah. So we've spent a bit of time on the 11th Doctor and Matt Smith. Mm-hmm. It's also Karen Gillan's, really, her first go-through as Amy Pond. What did you think of her in this story?
Yeah, as I said, I think she's very clever. She comes across as quite clever. We see early on she is not going to be a whiny, help me, doctor type companion. Very resourceful. And even to the point where she thinks her hand is turned to stone and she can't move. And she's telling the Doctor, she doesn't say to the Doctor, Doctor, you have to help me. I don't want to die here. She's telling the Doctor, you have to leave me.
Yes.
And the Doctor says, your hand is not stone. Yes, it is. And the Doctor finally just bites her hand.
Yes.
Which apparently Matt Smith did in real life.
Right. As I said, he's very Tom Bakery that way.
Yes, because he wanted to get the proper reaction. And she goes, ow, you bit me, but you're alive. But you bit me, but you're alive. Thank you very much. And they leave. But she comes across, she's very, very capable. The one thing I guess I don't like, and I know you're not really a fan of this scene either, is the very end of the two-parter.
That's what prevents this whole thing from being perfection to me. That last scene is it's like, really? We got this far. You're literally 2 inches from the finish line and you tripped.
Yeah. And the whole thing of, it's not so much that Amy wants to have sex with the Doctor. it gets a little awkward because she keeps pushing it. The doctor basically says no, and Amy keeps pushing it, and it's kind of played for laughs. And it's harder to watch now than maybe it was then. And Moffat himself even says he regrets doing it. And if there was anything about his time as showrunner he regretted or wished he could do over, it would be that. But there is one thing I did kind of like about that is that we see Amy's not falling in love with the doctor. She has no interest in the doctor as a companion, as was often the case with the previous companions in the RTD era, with the exception of Donna. No, she just wants to have sex with him because she's supposed to be getting married the next day. And
yeah, she wants a fling, apparently.
She wants a fling. She wants a fling with her childhood fantasy man.
Yeah, it just seems, especially in context, and especially when you realize that she's going to marry the guy who literally guarded the Pandorica for 2,000 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the one who waited.
Yeah.
This is who you're going to have cheat on a little. It's like, it didn't sit right with me on the, just even watching it without really knowing who Rory was.
Yeah.
And it just got worse over time. But yeah, that's the one misstep in this story.
Yeah.
One of the things I really like about Amy in this story is, and I think it's set up really nice from the 11th Hour and the Beast Below.
Okay.
She has, yes, she had all the issues, with the crack in the wall, with the whatever, the smilers and all the other stuff in Beast. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But the doctor pretty much saved the day. And I mean, yes, they were in danger. Their lives were in danger. But compared to this, it was relatively simple and whatever. So you see her through this. And as you said, she never says, "What is it, doctor?" But one of the things I love, she says it a few times, is just explain.
Yeah.
Statement of fact. Like, I don't get what's going on. Explain.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a Joe Grant. I have no idea what's going on. It's more I kind of understand this, but I need more context, is usually how she's saying that. But you can see her, at least in the beginning, particularly right when that video scene happens, of, oh, we're kind of in trouble, but yeah, the doctor will save me. Or it's not that bad. I shouldn't say the doctor will save me. It's more like, this is weird and dangerous, but, we'll get out of this fine.
Yeah.
And you see her at first. The doctor is trying to make very clear the angels are the worst.
Yeah.
These are just foul, evil creatures that are among the most dangerous in the universe. And you can just see like the lack of comprehension of that.
Yeah.
She's just kind of like, oh yeah, they're dangerous. It's like, no. This is not like, this is not Smilers dangerous. This is ending planets dangerous.
Oh yeah. And Amy had just faced Daleks, for God's sake.
Right.
And the doctor's like, no, these are scarier than Daleks.
Yeah, and as the story goes on, you see her come to realize, oh, this is what you meant, and kind of treat it more. But I found that part of the character, there's just certain scenes in the very beginning where she's almost like blasé about this whole thing. It's like, oh, I'm on another, like even the beginning, 5 minutes on another planet. Yay, I get to see a planet. Oh, there's a crash space. Oh, she's just kind of going along with stuff. And again, not really comprehending. And meanwhile, you have, like you said, the 11th Doctor is just like, he's annoyed with River at first. Why am I here?
Right.
And from that moment when she goes, what do you know of the Weeping Angels? He's all business.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he has his goofy lines, but I mean, at the core of it, he's like, oh boy, get out. Get out. We need to get out of here.
Yeah. We also have to mention, Mike, one of my favorite supporting characters in all of, let's say, New Who, Father Octavian.
Yep.
Good old Ian Glenn.
Jorah Mormont.
Yep.
From Game of Thrones.
Yep.
Supporting Khaleesi, supporting all the tough women.
Yep. It's funny, too. I remember there's one part of Game of Thrones where he contracts that disease, that kind of like...
Grayscale, yeah.
Yeah, it's grayscale, and he starts turning to stone.
Uh-huh.
So that was kind of funny, but, he's such a good actor, Ian Glenn. So this was like one of the first things I recall seeing him in. Like, I saw him in this well before I watched anything with Game of Thrones. And he's such a good character. And we get really this is our first good look at Moffat's view of the church,
Right.
which appears throughout Moffat's time as showrunner as Doctor Who, and made another appearance most recently in this past season of Doctor Who and the Moffat written episode Boom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember there's one point where Ruby Sunday says, wait, the church is soldiers? Since when? And the doctor says something along the lines of, your time is a blip in the history. Basically, the church has always been militant. And it's true. You look through the entire history of Earth, the church has always had like military ambitions, going back to the Middle Ages and
the
everything.
Crusades. What else are they?
Yeah, the Crusades, of course, the Crusades, and in going through the Renaissance and everything. It's only been in our current era that they've been non-military. So I love that whole concept of the soldiers in the church. And Father Octavian is so good, such a good character. And when he meets his end, I love that last scene with him and the doctor when Octavian is grappled around the throat by an angel, and the doctor knows that he just looks away, Octavian is going to have his neck broken.
Right.
And, they have a quick discussion about,
I wish I'd known you better.
Yeah.
Sir, I think you knew me at my best. That is such a great line.
It is. So I salute you, Father Octavian. And also he has got good lines with River too, where early on he says to River, you promised me an army. And she said, I promise you the equivalent of an army. When the doctor. And then later on he says to her, do you absolutely trust this man? And River says, I completely trust this man. He's not some sort of lunatic. I completely trust this man.
But I think what Father Octavian does in this story is you have two characters. Amy has this, I won't say blind faith in the doctor, but just implicit faith that the doctor is going to bail them out of whatever mess they're in. River has the same confidence. She knows the character better. In fact, she knows him better than he knows himself. But she has this. There's the one point when she's going, Doctor, this is usually when you do something clever and save us. She actually just flat out says that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Octavian is the grounding within the story. He's skeptical, and he's also smart enough to know they don't really know a ton about the angels, but he knows they're in a very dangerous situation. And you see him giving perhaps more caution and more thought into, we are going into something very, very dangerous, much more so than River or Amy are going to do.
Yeah.
So he's kind of just representing, okay, are we sure this is a good idea? Or the angels are infesting the area up ahead. How do we get around them?
Yeah.
Where River might be going, not that she wouldn't be scared of it or wouldn't be thinking of that, but she's just going to go, well, the doctor will figure it out. And he does not share that faith that both River and Amy have for good reason.
Yeah. I like what you said before about how he provides some grounding, because there's one point early on I think in part 1, where we know a couple of people have died, and the doctor makes some, not flippant, but maybe kind of apologetic remark to Father Octavian.
Yeah, and he's trying to be light about it, I think is the issue.
Yeah, he is. And Octavian says, and when you've flown away in that blue box of yours, I'll be sure to relay that to their families.
Yeah.
I mean, which is, point blank. Yep, that's true, because the doctor doesn't stick around for the aftermath of any of these big conflicts he ever gets involved in. He hops in the blue box and moves on, and other people have to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, quite honestly, most Doctor Who stories is, yes, he defeats the villain, but he just disappears after the villain's gone. There's an aftermath.
Yeah.
And he's rarely around for that.
Right.
I think we have covered most things in this story, except for, the subject of this season's podcast. So why don't we actually talk about River's song in the story?
Sure. I like River. We get to see, this is a slightly earlier version of River than what we saw in Silence in the Library. And she is very confident around the doctor. She feels quite at home with the doctor. She's very familiar with him to the point of she knows that the doctor will do what she wants. She has complete trust in the doctor. She thinks the doctor has complete trust in her.
Yeah.
Because you can tell we're at a point in her timeline where they're already married and they've been through a lot of adventures together. And so, from her vantage point, it's a mutual trust society. And the doctor doesn't quite feel the level of trust in her that she thinks he does.
Yeah, I would say that's the difference between this and Silence in the Library. In Silence in the Library, I think she starts out that way.
Yeah.
And it becomes very clear to her very early on in the story, oh, this is a really early version of him.
Yeah. I have to treat him very differently. Yes.
Yeah, so she's just like, oh, she has this whole implicit trust in him, but she's expecting it to be reciprocated. And
Right.
the way it's written, the doctor, he learned enough from Silence in the Library to where it's almost like he's going, I know I should trust you now, but I still don't know you. So he's kind of working with her, but it's very tentative. And there is a lot of just hesitancy and even mistrust on his part at times where he's just like,
Yeah.
I'm not feeling this, or like basically, I'm not getting this yet. I mean, he even has the one thing where he just kind of goes after the rescue with the air corridor. He's like, don't expect me to come rescuing you every time you need it. And she's like, you will.
Yeah.
And you just see the annoyance on his face of how can you be saying that? Now, we in 2024 know that's absolutely true.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you see why he would be going, this is literally the second time I've run into you. Why are you making these grand assumptions? And one of the things, the lines, I realize this is the first time she says it, is he does something where he gets rid of the angels at one point, and she just looks at him and goes, I hate you.
Yeah.
And his answer goes, no, you don't.
Yeah.
I was only thinking of that because that's one of my favorite lines, spoilers, in the Husbands of River song. With Vivaldi.
Yes.
So, I mean, you will hear this one many times, but
Yeah.
that one pops up. You see more of that relationship between them. And also, I like you see this time when Father Octavian's talking to her about this is what we let you out of prison for, out of the storm cage or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're starting to layer that in. Oh, she's done some really bad stuff. One of the things that makes it, I think, implicit that the good man that she killed is the doctor is you see how sad she is talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not like you killed somebody. She's not responding to that like, yeah, and the master deserved it. That's clearly not who she killed.
Right.
She is saying that with much regret.
And she knows that she didn't really kill the doctor, but she can't let on to anybody about any of this right now because of this particular point in her timeline.
Right. Yeah, she can't risk letting anybody know what really happened.
Right.
So I think one of the things you can see in the character this time is she's more, I think, cautious than and she didn't need to be in Silence of the Library. Silence of the Library is relatively self-contained.
Yeah.
Once she realizes she's a cipher to the doctor and he doesn't really know who she is, that's where she had that one thing where he's looking over at her diary and she's like, no, can't look at that. And that's pretty much the extent of it. You can see her in this story. This is the first time she's kind of hedging around certain things. Yeah, and like you said, Amy's asking her very pointed questions and she deflects them all. Either she doesn't answer or answers like, oh, you're good, which is a non-answer.
Yeah.
And even when the doctor is trying to talk to her, I was trying to picture what it would be like in such a character's head. Here's somebody you really love and trust, but you can't really talk to them.
Yeah.
Because you can't spoil. I mean, she's the one who always says spoilers, but she literally can't spoil anything because she's realizing, oh, from your perspective, this is one of our first meetings.
Right.
But you know enough now to be asking questions.
Yeah.
The tenant doctor did not know her, period. So he's just his questions are, who the hell are you, basically?
Yeah. And also, I want to say in Silence in the Library, when she's first going through the diary with 10 And she says, "Oh, have we done the crash of the Byzantium?"
Yeah.
And he's looking at her blankly. And Moffat just kind of tossed it in there. And it was only later on he thought, oh, you know what? I should build that out into a full story. And that's how we got this.
Oh, yeah. He built out most of them. He had a bunch of throwaways. And somehow, again, he's a very creative mind who I respect a lot. He didn't just go, okay, well, we're going to put River Song. It's like, oh, she actually referenced the adventures they took.
Yeah.
Let's spell some of them out. And as I read about the making of this, when he said the crash of the Byzantium, he had no idea what that was.
No.
It just sounded cool. But it's like, okay, I'm going to make this about the crash of the Byzantium, whatever that is. And this will be the adventure.
Yeah. It's just very good. It's all so well done. And River Song in this, she's very capable. She's clever in her own way. We know she's keeping a ton of secrets. We see it in her face, how miserable she looks at times, how lonely she looks at times. And you can tell she would love to be able to spill some of this.
Yeah.
And in fact, we get to see, like, much later on, at the end of the wedding of River Song, in fact, when both Amy and Rory think the doctor is dead, and River materializes in Amy's backyard wearing the same outfit she's wearing in this story.
Yeah.
And so she says, oh, yeah, she just ended up saying goodbye to the doctor after the story with the Byzantium. But she said she had to lie. She had to pretend she didn't know Amy.
Right.
And that's just the burden of time travel. You have to basically keep your mouth shut, because if you reveal spoilers, you put the entire timeline at risk.
Yeah. Something we should mention production-wise as well. The naming of Amy Pond was very deliberate. The shades of Pond River.
Okay.
That connection, even before they were cast, Moffat had decided to make the name Amy Pond with the idea of, if I can get Alex Kingston back as River Song and we can make this work. Again, he kind of just throws his stuff out and hopes it works. And it's amazing how many times he gets it to work. He had the idea that, yes, River would be Amy Pond's daughter. He had that in mind. As of this series, the only person who knew that was himself.
Right.
Does share that information with Alex Kingston only at the beginning of Series 6. But for this, it's just an idea. And I kind of suspect it's also because I don't think he really knew how much he was going to be able to get Alex Kingston back.
Yeah, exactly.
I think by the time you get Series 6, it's kind of apparent that, oh, she'll come back whenever asked. And you and I heard her say that when we were at Gallifrey 1.
Yeah.
She was flat out, I would love to meet Ncuti Gatwa. Like,
of course.
She would have loved to have met Jodie. If they ask and she's available, she's doing it. But I think at this stage, even though she had come back for this, and I'm sure when she came back from this, I don't know this for a fact, I'm sure they had contracted her for the Big Bang and the Pandorica Opens.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know, sure they even knew beyond that what was going to happen.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. Well, I think we've kind of covered pretty much everything here about this amazing two-parter, Mike.
Yeah, I would say so.
Anything else you want to say? You think so?
Yeah, I think so. We've pretty much covered as much as you can.
Yeah.
I mean, we could probably spend another 2 hours really dissecting it, but I think we've hit all the beats and all the parts of this that I think are important.
Yeah. So next time, then we will be covering the Pandorica Opens and the Big Bang Theory, correct?
Well, the Big Bang, not the Big Bang Theory.
Oh, the Big Bang Theory. Sorry, friends. Sorry.
No Sheldon.
Sorry. That would be interesting crossover, though, wouldn't it? Okay.
Yeah.
Every Saturday since we've lived in this apartment, I have awakened at 6:15, poured myself a bowl of cereal, added a quarter cup of 2% milk, sat on this end of this couch, turned on BBC America, and watched Doctor Who.
Yes, the Pandorica Opens and the Big Bang. No theory, just Big Bang. So, Mike, how can people find you on the interwebs should they wish to contact you?
If people would wish to contact me about the show or anything Doctor Who related, you can find me on Instagram and on Threads. I've actually been engaging with a lot of Doctor Who fans on Threads recently, which has been very nice.
Yeah, there's a lot.
It's a growing community. I can be found at Mike Ferguson 5150. for the people who are still on Twitter, X, whatever the hell it is, I am maintaining the Prepare the Pod account, which is for our show. And if you just want to email me, you can find me at mike.ferguson1@gmail.com. Ken, how about yourself?
Yes, I am available on Instagram and Threads as Ken Hart Writer. I am also maintaining the Instagram account for the podcast at Prepare the Pod. And you can also contact me via email at kenhartwriter@gmail.com. And of course, you can listen to any previous episodes of our podcast at preparethetimeless.com and on your favorite podcatcher of choice.
And I'd like to add one more thing, which I just realized. Next month, we are recording this in the middle of July. I will be attending Long Island 2.
Woohoo!
So I will be there. You will probably find me cosplaying as, God help me, Sasha Jawan's master, wearing that mashup outfit with Jodie's coat, the 7th Doctor's vest, the 4th Doctor's. I have everything. So I figured, why the hell not? I will be there.
Right.
I will probably be talking on a panel or two. So if you spot me, say hi. Tell me that you like the show. If you hate the show, just keep walking. But apart from that, with all seriousness, if you're a fan of the show, I'll be there. Would love to chat and hear what you think about Doctor Who and all things related.
Very cool. Very cool. So until next time when we crack open the Pandorica, I have been Ken.
And I've been Mike.
And we'll see you next time on Prepare the Time Lash.
So long.
Bye.
Would you like a drink? Order brown brandy. Help yourself. Don't tell Dad.
The theme music for Prepare the Time Lash is provided courtesy of Soundsmith Productions. If you like this podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe to Prepare the Time Lash on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, or any of your favorite RSS feeds or podcatchers. And if you really like this podcast, please leave us a review at one of those locations. For more information about Prepare the Time Lash, check out our website at preparethetimeless.com. To get in touch with us or receive updates and notifications about future episodes, follow us on Twitter at PrepareThePod. Thanks for listening.